Some of President Trump's toughest critics in the media had words of praise for his speech to Congress this week, a stunning contrast with the largely negative coverage of his first month in office.
The time for small thinking is over. The time for trivial fights is behind us.
Tonight, this is easily the most presidential that he's been.
This was the best speech of his political career, his short political career.
I want to say this right, but I feel like tonight, Donald Trump became the president of the United States.
There are a lot of people who have a lot of reason to be frustrated with him, to be fearful of him, to be mad at him. But that was one of the most extraordinary moments you have ever seen in American politics, period.
And he said in the beginning that he was going to speak from his heart, and I certainly think he did that.
Katie Pavlich, with all of that praise, and it really was kind of across the political spectrum with a few exceptions, was there an undertone of, we really didn't think he was capable of this?
Definitely. I mean, based on especially the media's relationship with President Trump saying fake news, all that kind of thing, I was surprised to see such openness to the things that he was saying. And I think on the president's, to give him some credit, it wasn't just what he said and the words that came out of his mouth, it was his tone and the things that he decided to address. There weren't any personal attacks on his usual foes and what he would call enemies, right? And when you contrast this or compare it to the campaign, let's not forget that when President Trump and then candidate Trump talked about real issues, that's when he came up in the polls and actually started catching Hillary Clinton. In the last month, we've seen his approval rating go down because it's been a lot of back and forth, focusing on petty issues. I think when you look at that speech, he goes back to focusing on real issues that can affect everyone rather than his own personal pet peeves or problems that he has with certain issues.
CNN's Van Jones was talking about that emotional moment with the widow of the fallen Navy SEAL, but even many people on your side of the spectrum, Michael, called this a speech optimistic, uplifting, calling for unity. He didn't really change his positions on much of anything, but very rare praise for this president.
Yeah, it is true that he didn't change his positions. He just made them sound nicer. But, I mean, he deserved credit for that. I wrote a reasonably favorable column about the speech myself, actually.
Was that hard for you to write?
No.
Were you grimacing when you wrote that?
No, I gave it to him. It's fine. I mean, expectations were low and strange. I mean, people expected him, I don't know, to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger's bad ratings or whatever, the failing New York Times. And he didn't do any of that. So he looked like a president for an hour.
Well, to that point, I wrote a story, covered the speech, and talked about how it was a hope-filled speech, and he reached out to Democrats, as he did throughout the speech, and enemies and foes. And some of the criticism of the story I wrote was, I'm surprised you covered the speech straight. As opposed to, they don't expect it. And I couldn't believe it, actually.
But my theory of this is this speech was how the pundits, the media in general, want Trump to behave, to be reasonable sounding and bipartisan sounding and not engage in all the attacks. And they don't like when he's firing off things on Twitter and is kind of chaotic and is attacking the press, among others. So that's, I think, one of the reasons there was, well, yeah, maybe this could be a president. And of course, 24 hours later, everyone's talking about Jeff Sessions.
Well, right, but quite frankly, it's not just pundits or his foes who want him to behave in a more presidential manner. If you talk to Trump supporters, especially reluctant Republicans who voted for him, they really wish he would just put the Twitter feed away, or at least have it be something that isn't a reactionary tool and more of a proactive thing, not used to attack people on non-substantive issues. So that speech gave them that confidence. But yes, the next day we were talking about our Attorney General Jeff Sessions, which wasn't of the of the Trump administration's doing.
It was a Washington Post story.
story.
So just briefly, did you get any feedback, or did you notice what people say? You DC pundits are so easy. One speech and now suddenly you're all let's kiss and make up.
Sure, of course. There was a whole lot of that, and there was a really interesting debate playing out over the course of the week over that moment with this Navy SEAL's widow. The press are suckers for moments like that. I did notice that some military people tweeted that they thought it was kind of manipulative. So there was a debate about it.
There's a long tradition that I didn't personally have any problem with it. By the way, as far as petty fights, the president did yesterday tweet at Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was leaving Celebrity Apprentice. In fairness, Arnold blamed Trump for his lack of success on the show. All right, Aaron McPike, we'll see you later. Katie Pavlich, Michael Tomaszki, thanks for joining us this Sunday. A head of Trump spokeswoman will join us to